What Matthew's doing is that Matthew is ringing a bell. He's ringing a bell, and that bell is he's going, hey, you remember the last time God saved his people? Hey, look, it's happening again. Remember when God saved his people from the Egyptians, from Pharaoh, all of that? It's happening again. And we've looked at how there were these servants, Joseph and Moses, right? They both were presented with very hard circumstances. Moses got kicked out of Egypt. Joseph's future wife was pregnant, and it wasn't his. Not a good situation. But God comes to both and sends them on an incredible journey. And then we see how they are confronted by the kings of their day, by Moses in front of Pharaoh and Herod in front of Joseph and the Magi. And it looks like Pharaoh and Moses are the king. It looks like God's not in charge. It looks like whatever is going to happen is going to get squelched and pushed down. But we see that God is in charge because, and behold, the star appears, and behold, all the plagues, right? So Pharaoh is not in charge. And then, yes, last week we looked at the son's life. The son's life that Joseph and the baby, they fled to Egypt. They fled because of the killing and all of that. And we see through that Jesus is, because he is now standing in for all the people of God before him and all the people of God after him, that Jesus is standing in for all of us. And today, we're talking about Red Sea crossings and going into Nazareth. That's what we're talking about today. It's kind of this fight or flight idea. And to really kind of talk about it first, we need to talk about moving. Coley and I had a statistic that we were operating off of for a while that said we moved 5 times in 5 years. All right? It's a lot of moving. Moving stinks, but it's true. And when we finished with the seminary and we were going to the first call, we actually hired people to load the truck. My first experience with having hired movers whatsoever, and I said, this is about how big our place is. They're like, all right, we'll send people there that can get it done in 2 hours. Now, this is my knowledge, right? Like, I had always moved with, I got 10 of my buddies. Then we got all together, and it would take us 5 hours to fill the truck with all of our junk, right? Take us 5 hours to get us out of the house and all that. And these guys are saying this one too. I'm like, oh man, they're going to bring 6 people. Well, 2 guys show up at the house. I was like, oh no, we're going to need a bigger moving crew. 2 guys just show up at the house. And they're going to take forever to get everything out of our house into there. They're going to need a bigger moving crew. That idea, we're going to need a bigger moving crew, is what's going on in Egypt. So what Coley just read was that the people of Israel had just been pulled out of Egypt. They had been pulled out, and they're going towards, and Pharaoh had enough. The angel of death came and visited him and everyone in Egypt, killed off their firstborns, and Pharaoh's like, get out of here, get out of my sight. Well, all of a sudden, he gets super angry again, and he leaves. He kicks everyone up, but he gets angry, and he's like, they all need to die. So he assembles his army, and he starts chasing after these fleeing civilian Hebrews. And what do the Hebrews have? What do the Hebrews have? They're just ex-slaves. They can't really fight, right? What do they have on their side? Well, they've got God on their side, but God is represented in the story as like a cloud in front of them. Has a cloud ever offered you protection? No, right? Like that's what's, the cloud is just leading before them, and they're like, great. And then who else? Who is their fearless leader? It's Moses, right? Yeah, Moses. But how old is Moses? Yeah, he was 8 in his 80s at the time, right? He's old. Like many of you in the room. I didn't say that. That was someone else. That was Kevin. Well, how dare you grab the microphone and yell like that? Yeah. but like that, if you were wanting to have a revolution and to pull, and say like, we're going to free all these people, who would you grab? Would you grab the 85-year-old? No, it's like, all right, you guys go on ahead. I'll catch up. Like that's, over there, like complaining about the hip the whole time, like Jacob. It's not who you would pick. This is what is on the Israelite side. It's just ordinary stuff. It's just ordinary things. It's this cloud, and it's Moses. It's just ordinary things. That's all there is to it. And they go through, and one of the things Coley read. No, actually, we'll switch over to Nazareth now. And it's just ordinary things. So then we go over to the Gospel of Matthew. And Matthew has the same issue. Matthew has the same thing going on, is he keeps pushing Jesus kind of down. He doesn't want you to think that he's this big, lofty thing. So Herod dies, and Joseph takes the family up to Egypt. And where are they going to go? They're going to go to Jerusalem, right? So probably Jesus can get on the throne, right? But that's not what happens. Suddenly they realize that they don't have a friend. They have Antiochus, which is just as bad as Herod, on the throne. And then they're like, well, what are we going to do? And in a dream it says, go to Nazareth. Nazareth. Now imagine if you fell asleep tonight and in a dream it said, you aren't safe where you live now. You need to move to Yeehaw Junction. Like, why in the world would I move to Yeehaw Junction? There's nothing there. The Yeehaw Junction is the most ridiculous place. Has anyone stayed at that hotel at Yeehaw Junction? Would anyone stay at that hotel at Yeehaw Junction? I love how it says like clean and good food on the sign right now. I just passed it last month, and I was like, it's a very descriptive sign, because I don't know if anyone believes it. But Yeehaw Junction, that's kind of like Nazareth. It was smaller than Bethlehem, and all of our Christmas carols talk about how small Bethlehem was. And this was even smaller. So Jesus comes out of Nazareth. And I love in the Gospel of John, it even talks about Jesus growing up in Nazareth. And it says, we already went over that. And it says this, can anything good come out of Nazareth? And this is kind of the point for today. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Because it's weird that God sends his son, the Savior of the world, into nowhere, into Yeehaw Junction. I have a friend who grew up in a place called Kensington, Kansas, population 500 people, and her aunt calls it Chitlin Switch. And I think it's hilarious every time. But Yeehaw Junction, right? Middle of nowhere, nothing's there, nothing good comes out of that place. You just pass right through it. And I think this should cause us all a pause, because Matthew and John here want for us to have a pause here and say to ourselves, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Can anything good come out of the ordinary things? Because that's not how we think God works. We often don't ascribe God working through just the everyday things that we do. It's like, oh, I'm just doing the daily grind, wake up, go to work, come home, make dinner, go to bed, do the same thing over again. God doesn't work through those things, right? God works through the extraordinary stuff. God is big. I found this right on the internet. Like, you think big, you serve a big God, right? That's kind of how we think. We're like, ooh, I need to do big things for God. And we're always looking for God to do the big things in our life. And we cry out to God, God, you need to do a big thing in my life. You need to heal me of this cancer. You need to get me into a better job. You need to save my marriage. You need to do big things in my life. God, if you're really there, you'll show me your powerful ways. You're a big, powerful moving crew. You are the God of Jerusalem. But can anything good come out of Nazareth? But God made flesh comes out of Nazareth. God comes to his people out of the ordinary. Little things. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? And that's what's beautiful about that story in Exodus. That they're going through, all they have is a cloud in front of them and an old man leading them on the other side. And the mightiest army in the world is chasing after them. Do you remember and this is like a real feeling that they were having. They knew they had nothing. Because what were they saying? They're like, we're going to die out here, Moses. You've brought us out here just to kill us. This is all just a ploy. That's all you're doing. God can't do these big things. But then what happens? God tells Moses to stretch out his arms. And something extraordinary happens. But I don't know if you noticed it. We wrote it at the beginning of the reading. I don't know if you heard it. But it's just, how it happens is just through ordinary things. It's this old man and wind. The thing that animates the trees. And remember when it says wind, it's all the same word as spirit. The spirit that animates the trees and it moves forward. The Spirit of God goes over and parts the waters so they can walk through on dry ground. These ordinary things, these things that are around us all the time, God uses to cause extraordinary things. The ordinary of every day. And what good can come out of Nazareth? Basic things. Basic things can come out of Nazareth. God uses those things that come out of Nazareth, uses those basic things like water and the Spirit. The basic things like wine and bread to bring about extraordinary things. That oftentimes we can look and there's just a little bit of water inside of a little baptismal font here. There's nothing to that. It's just words and some water. But God, through the basic things, causes extraordinary things to happen. There's just bread and wine here. There's really nothing going on. It's just all a symbol. But God uses the basic things to bring about extraordinary stuff. And that's how Jesus works. He's never pushing higher and higher and higher, but he stays in the basicness of life. That when someone needs sight, when someone has leprosy, his first action is to actually touch that person who hadn't been touched. And here's this ordinary touch provides years of healing. This is how Jesus works, and this is how God works. Through the ordinary things of everyday life to create extraordinary things. A lot of times we want to be seen on, we want to do big things like, let's, as a church or something like that, let's do big things, let's get on the news, let's do all this stuff. But to see big things happen, it takes being there in the ordinary. To have a good functioning relationship or a marriage, it means being there in the ordinary every day. To have a good functioning relationship with your children, it means being there, playing on the floor with them. Not in the big things, right? In the ordinary, and extraordinary things happen through that. To make an extraordinary church, it means being there in the ordinary things in the ordinary days. Because God works through the ordinary things to bring about extraordinary. He works through the basic things to bring about extraordinary things. And that's how much he loves us. Through a basic death on a cross that didn't have any power over him. And so he rose and gave us a new life. A life which gives our hearts the same rhythm as his new kingdom. God works with the basic things, which is really good news. So, those movers, they show up. By the way, Coley wasn't at this time. Well, Coley wasn't at this move and stuff like that. No, you were at that one. I thought I was going to tell a bad story about Coley. There aren't any bad stories. It's when we moved into that house that she wasn't there. There aren't any bad stories about Coley. But those movers, they showed up, and they had those two guys, just two guys, not even looking all that big. They showed up and they filled that truck in an hour and a half. You know? And the reason why is they actually knew how to do it. Rather than carrying one or two boxes, they did stuff like this. That's not a picture. That's just a picture I found. That's not a picture of them. But I saw them moving things like I've never seen before. The whole time we drove to the new place, nothing shifted at all. It was the best move we'd ever had. It was unbelievable. And they were just ordinary dudes. Nothing special. Nothing special. But that's the thing. That God works through all of us. He works through ordinary water. He works through ordinary bread. He works through all of us, whether you are young or old, whether you know nothing or you know everything about the Bible. God works through us all, through the ordinary things to bring about his life so that the nations all around us may have hope in his name. Be blessed because God works through you because he loves you. Amen.